Hello. So today I'm being joined by Nicki James, who we've worked with in the podcast agency to launch her brand new podcast, which is exactly the show that Nicki's going to tell you about in a moment. And I thought it might be interesting for you to hear a little bit about the concept behind Nicki's show and how this has gone. So we officially launched it yesterday at about 8 a.m. So Nicki, over to you. Tell us a little bit about your show and how it's all gone so far.
Oh my goodness, it's been an absolute whirlwind and much like more crazy than I could ever imagine. So the show is called We Are Seen, and it comes from my complete and utter belief that it's generally aimed at women. So sorry, men listening, but generally I believe that women should be seen and heard, and that we are completely and utterly enough to be front and forward in our brands. So I'm a brand strategist, and I think we don't put enough of ourselves, our vulnerabilities, our realness out there into the world. So the podcast is essentially to be able to spread that message, to be able to empower and motivate people to go out there and take action and be the face of their brands. Oh,
we keep dropping out a little bit. So okay. So this went live yesterday. It went live yesterday.
yes.
And tell us about what the last 24 hours have looked like for you.
Ridiculous.
And your dog's
Absolutely. Absolutely ridiculous. So essentially we went live at 8 a.m. We started shouting about it. And I think it was by the end. So I did a live event. And by the end of that, I think we were at 59. And I went to the pub and had like a glass of wine because I was like, oh my God, how has this even happened? By the time I got back from the pub after this glass of wine, we were at 20. And then I woke up this morning being like, okay, so 20 is pretty damn good. Like I'm pretty happy with 20.
This is in the UK business charts. So the main charts where all the heavy hitters are. And yeah, so tell us, this morning you woke up.
And
So
then
this
there's
is
little old me.
yeah. So
little old me.
Within 22 hours, where had your show got to?
We were at number 13 in the main business charts this morning
Mm-hmm.
when I woke up. So yeah, within 22 hours, number 13. And we were at number 4 in the entrepreneurship category, which is just insane.
And what's that done for you and your audience that you can already see?
So much. Like the comments that are coming off the back of it are just absolutely amazing. It's like people are saying that it's a completely different way to listen to me speaking. It's so much easier to take that stuff in. Like people were messaging me yesterday saying how motivated they felt after listening to that podcast. And you know what? Like I'm a really visible human being, like as a general. So I'm all over Instagram and I'm all over Facebook and I'm quite good on my email list. But I think it's just a different way for people to be able to hear you and they take in the information more.
Yeah. And so we've obviously worked together over a few months to get this concept right and to get the launch strategy right. What's that process been like for you? And has anything come up that you were surprised by?
So I think my own little wobbles and self-doubt along the way. So, you know, like back when I started, like I'm sure most entrepreneurs, I've had the imposter syndrome. I've had the fear of showing up, and I thought I was over that. And I'm quite like, look, I stand on stages, I do all these things. Like, why is this podcast giving me the wobbles? And we were supposed to go live last week, and we actually didn't, did we? Like, I had a call with you, and I was like, oh my goodness, I just don't think I could do this because what you notice is there was a few people that were in my sort of network that were going live with their podcasts, and I kind of got that little bit of like, oh my goodness, like what happens if I don't get those results? What happens if people don't love what it is that I'm going to say? Like what happens if this just absolutely flops? All those thoughts go through your head, and you look, I can train myself to almost like give myself a talking to, but for some reason I couldn't give myself a talking to. I needed Anna to give me a talking to.
So we then created some space, didn't we? We said, look, you need to, for whatever's going on for you right now, and personal stuff does crop up, and particularly when you're about to get super visible, which is what a podcast does. So we said, look, let's delay this launch, let's get you in the right headspace, and then let's go for it. Tell me a little bit about the feedback that you've been getting from your audience so far.
Like a lot of people have just been saying that even though they've probably heard me talk about some of these stuff before, that it just feels like it's sunk in more. Like I said earlier, like a lot of people have been saying how motivating it is. I think it's really inspired people. Like we created a WhatsApp pop-up group, and like the women in there who are obviously like our big like take action secret squirrels, like they're just like absolutely blown away. Like, because to be honest, I didn't even think it was possible, because you hear how difficult it is to get to these places, and I think it just creates this like absolute like buzz. There's so much buzz around me at the moment, which wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have launched the podcast.
So what was your motivation for doing this show in the first place?
I've been asked for a good few years now. People kept saying like, "Oh, Nicki, you should do a podcast." And I remember having a conversation with you a few years ago, but it never felt right. It never felt like I knew exactly what it was that I wanted to say in that moment. Whereas now I know how I want to help people. And I believe that we have to spread our message as far and wide as we possibly can. And this podcast gives me another platform to be able to do that, and to be able to create loyal people that get to dip in and out of what it is that you've got to say. And like you say, like create these like loyal followers that hang off your word because you're in their ears. And I do think there's something quite intimate about that. There's something intimate about you, people putting their headphones on and listening to you talking to them. So it was a no-brainer for me that it would eventually come. But who am I to tell people that they need to be seen if I'm not utilizing as many platforms as I possibly can to be seen, but the right platforms for me?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's that done for you then as you're entering the UK main business charts, which is the field you want to be seen and heard in, that you're then up against, you're seeing yourself alongside some really heavy hitting podcasters and really, really incredible, phenomenal entrepreneurs. What's that done for you so far?
So yesterday, it's massively increased my confidence. Yesterday, I think I had that like little old me. Today, I'm like, yeah, me. And I like, it's mad because I think like I've gone from having that like little old me, as if that's happened, like, is this even real? Like, let me pinch myself, to today being like, no, I want to get into the top 10 now. Come on, what else do we need to do? And I just think like that is just something that naturally to me, like I think it could change everything that I'm doing. Like I think it could change how I'm showing up. I think it gives you that confidence when you're able to reach to those levels, and you're seeing the people that you're surrounded by in this business church. You think, yeah, like I've got something really good to say. And actually that confidence within myself has completely shifted. So it's more than just let's do a podcast. It's like it's a podcast that not only will hopefully change other people's lives as they listen to what it is that I've got to say, but I believe now that it's got the potential to change my own as well, like, and my reach, my impact, and my influence on people.
It makes me really tingle because it's really challenging for podcasts to get into the charts anyway, to do significantly well at launch. And then naturally there's a kind of a lot of shows subside, and they aren't in the top 10 for a long period of time, and that's perfectly normal. But I'm a big believer that if you don't utilize a platform to its absolute full potential, then why are you doing it in the first place? And I think this has been just testament to that already. And you have already had members of your audience reach out to you that you wouldn't necessarily know were as hooked into your work or inspired by what you're doing, because they wouldn't naturally comment on the fact that they'd seen a reel that you've done on Instagram, or they wouldn't necessarily comment on LinkedIn. But because they feel very drawn into your story, then they do want to support your podcast launch. I think that's really, really powerful.
It is massively, and I think you see people come out of the woodwork as well. Like all your lurkers suddenly come out of the woodwork. The people that you never hear from, and you think, who the blooming hell is this sharing this, and like saying how amazing they found it. It's like it creates like this happening, like this thing that's like out there. And I generally believe that I think it could be very easy to just become a loyal follower of a podcast, whereas I think you peak and trough a little bit with other social media like platforms and other marketing platforms.
And what do you think would have happened if you'd gone it alone?
Well, I
If you
probably wouldn't have
decided
known.
not to get help?
So I think the massive thing would be that the first thing that we really spoke about was, what is this podcast about? That deep dive in the beginning was really useful for me to be able to really like control my own thoughts, like of what it was that I wanted this to do, because I'm like a typical entrepreneur. I've got a million ideas and I want to do all the things. So actually having somebody help with that. But then I think like the launch period massively, and I remember saying to you yesterday, I voice noted you yesterday, and I was like, how have we even done this? And you're like, well, because we know how to launch these podcasts. Like, and I think, you know, I've obviously done events before and I've launched things before and we've been really successful, but would I have done all of this for a podcast launch? Maybe not, because you see so many people just going, I've got podcasts now, and they put out like one episode. Did I balls know that I needed to record 10 episodes beforehand and be completely and utterly ready? Would I have shied away from it for goodness knows how long? Probably. I think you're like the support network in your back pocket. You're the person that pushes you. You're the person, and I look, like, you and your team are incredible. Like, everything that you've done, it's been so easy. I probably wouldn't have done it myself, and I certainly wouldn't have launched it the way that I did.
I think there's something about committing to the fact that you want to have something quality that represents your brand. And for you particularly, you talk your book and your business is called Just Brand You. So for you then to put out something that didn't represent you well, or was fudged and half done, actually wouldn't speak of the way that you want to show up in the
Oh my
world.
goodness. Completely.
So
It's about brand reputation, isn't it? And I think, like, if I'm going to do something, then I have to do it well. And it's probably why it's taken me 2 years to do it, because even though you were around doing this stuff for 2 years ago, I didn't know what I wanted to say. Now I'm really clear on what it is that I want to say. That podcast can have the most impact. So then coming to you at this point and being like, I want this to be so polished, I want it to launch as big as we can, like, that was the right time. There was only one person I was going to go to, so.
and that was me, just for the record.
Oh yeah, and that was the other person.
Well, I'm so pleased for you, Nicki. And I've sat and listened in my car. I listened in the shower this morning. That's one of my favourite places for checking in with a podcast. I was listening while I was doing my makeup. So if you haven't had a listen and you are a woman in business, a female entrepreneur particularly, and maybe you do find it challenging to show up as who you really are, then go and head over and listen to We Are Seen with Nicki James and give her some support. Let her know what you think about the show. Because I believe that with podcasts, as audiopreneurs, we are using an incredibly influential platform to change one life at a time. But what we're able to do is reach many countries. In fact, Nicki's show just within 24 hours has reached 11 countries and charted in 5 countries just in under 24 hours. And if you can touch the right person with your message and understand how to bring them into your business through your podcast, then that's a really powerful medium. So what would you say to someone then who has been looking at others launching podcasts, have been thinking maybe that's for me, maybe not? What would you say has already been the impact for you of doing this?
So I would say the first thing is, don't worry about what everybody else is doing, because you're you, and what you put out there is going to be right for you and the people that need to hear what it is that you've got to say. So like, don't get put off like I did of like launching the thing or doing the thing because you're worried that it's a crazy online space. Like, I think that doesn't matter, and I think that's what I've learned. But I think just do it, because actually I can already tell now, like, we're going to go after this, like, from the podcast launch, we're going into another launch, and I can feel it, like that excitement and that energy. So it's now like riding that wave. That wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have launched a podcast. I can start to see now, like, all the benefits that having a podcast is going to have in terms of like the buzz and the excitement that it creates. Like, even like launching like a new episode out, and look, it's like day 2, but like launching a new episode out today, it's like everybody started to go, oh my goodness, there's a new episode, I'm gonna go listen to it, you know, like, people don't get that excited, go, oh my god, Nicki James has just done a new reel. People, Nicki James is just, people don't do that. Like,
you don't get it about
So it is,
anything else.
Exactly, it's like a completely different format of getting in front of people, and it means that you've got a way for people that aren't necessarily on different social media channels to be able to connect with you in a really personal and intimate way, and it gives you the chance to be able to show your true self, because that sounds strange, because my whole business is about just being you, and I am very much myself, but I do believe when you're recording the podcast, there is something about it, the words just flow out of your mouth and you truly say what it is that you want to say. That for your business surely must be game changing, because you're actually speaking from a place of your truth without being like, oh, I'm on a live. Do I want to say that? Oh, somebody's like giving a comment. It's just you, your earphones, and you saying what you really want to say. That's the most powerful thing, right?
Yeah, it's incredible for a personal brand and developing that connection. I'm already sold on podcasting, obviously. So thank you,
I
Nicki.
am
And
now.
please do go and have a listen to We Are Seen with Nicki James, and reach out to Nicki and let her know what you think. Thank you so much for joining me today, Nicki, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks, Anna, and thank you so much for all your help.